Hello everyone, today I'm going to present you MRS, Magnetic Resonance Spectroscopy. MRS is a magnetic resonance imaging technique which is used to dedicate existence and concentrations of different metabolites in a tissue. Using this information of metabolites, pathology of some diseases can be provided, such as brain tumors, infections, and etc. MRS differs from MRI with giving the relative concentrations of biochemical compounds on a tissue, while MRI only provides information about the structure of the tissue. So, we can use MRI and MRS as complementary for diagnosis. MRS uses concepts of chemical shift, which is a frequency offset caused by the reduction of magnetic fields around nuclei of an element, and this shielding caused by the electron cloud around the nuclei. MRS method uses this shift to recognize different metabolites, since shielding differs from one metabolite to another, and in that way it provides the generation of the spectrum. Frequency shift is determined according to a reference molecule, which is called tetramethylsilane, which is shown in graph as NAA. Spectrum also shows concentration of metabolites in peaks. The area under the curve of peak gives us concentration of each metabolite, and the width of a peak is determined by T2 star relaxation of that metabolite. There are some stuff we have to consider for MRS imaging. First of all, for MRS imaging, very strong magnetic field, at least 1.5 Tesla strong magnetic field must be used, and the field used must be very homogeneous to detect the peaks. Otherwise, the peaks, the metabolites, will not be distinguishable and can be even masked by background nodes. So to prevent it, field homogeneity must be provided on experimented tissue, and as long as the area of experimented tissue increases, it will be harder to maintain a homogeneous field. Another issue is that water peak, which is at 4.7 ppm, and it must be suppressed, otherwise it would cause masking of other peaks, so that other metabolites will not be distinguishable in the presence of water. Moreover, there is another issue called SNR, signal to noise ratio, which means that in here the intensity, the amplitude of peaks versus the background noise. So it must be high in order to have a distinguishable spectrum. And for that, averaging is done. Taking average of different FID signals provides us to have a larger SNR, and in that way we can have a higher quality image. Another issue is spectral resolution, and it must be considered because it also affects quality of imaging. Spectral resolution provides us the ability to distinguish different metabolites, different peaks of metabolites, which is provided by deciding a right sampling time in order to prevent overlapping of peaks. By selecting a longer sampling time for the metabolites with longer T2 relaxation time, we could prevent overlapping of peaks so that there won't be any undesirable triplets or doublets in spectrum graph. We continue with the imaging. First of all, water suppression must be provided, and to mask water, we use some sequences. Chemical shift selective sequence, CHES, or immersion recovery sequences such as flare and stir are some of them. Chess includes 390-degree selective excitations of different gradients, different directions, x, y, and z. And it provides water elimination, water suppression in the image. And the gradients used in chess must be followed by dephasing gradients. On the other hand, immersion recovery includes 180 degrees of RF pulse followed by a 90 degree of RF pulse excitation couples. And by adjusting Ti value according to water's T1, because that's the material we want to suppress, this sequence could provide water suppression in image. For example, using flare sequence, Ti must be selected as about 2000 milliseconds to provide water suppression according to requirements. It can be a single voxel spectroscopy, and the other one is chemical shift imaging, CSI, which is spectroscopic imaging. It's for larger volumes. And for single voxel spectroscopy, volume is selected by 3 selective excitations in all 3 axes, and for a single voxel is selected finally, and that single voxel is passed through some sequence, steam or press, stimulated echo accusation mode or point result spectroscopy is used afterwards. And none of these sequences actually include a phase encoding gradient or data accusation gradient without gradient, since the imaging includes only a voxel, not a volume. So to start with press, which is point result spectroscopy, this sequence includes 90 degree selective excitation of Z gradient followed by 280 degree selective excitations of X and Y gradients. In that way, actually, the volume selection is provided within this press sequence, because we are giving just selective excitations from all dimensions. And afterwards, there are 2 echoes produced in this sequence. First one is produced in TE1 and the second one is produced at TE2, and they are actually they don't have same amplitude. TE2 is smaller than TE1 because of T2 decay, and press actually has higher SNR compared to steam. It can be used with both small and large amount of excitation times. Steam, on the other hand, includes 390 degree selective excitations, and stimulated echo is born from the cumulative effect of these 90 degree excitations. The stimulated echo occurred is actually has smaller amplitude compared to the echo occurred in press. So we have a low SNR compared to press sequence. The CTE occurs at time TE plus TM, which is where TM is called mixing time. And it's also important to point out that steam requires a short excitation time, because larger ones causes a decrease in intensity in spectrum, which can create triplets on spectrum, which is undesirable. So better steam imaging requires smaller excitation time, And it's also should be pointed out that all those 90-degree excitations are selective excitations to provide the volume selection. And for CSI, chemical shift imaging, there is a larger volume selection occurs, of course, and it can be a 2D imaging or 3D imaging. If it is 2D imaging, selective excitation must be provided at the beginning. We are combining spatial localization with spectroscopy. So there will be a Z gradient that provides slice selection, but X and Y is used for phase encoding for this time. So image reconstruction this time requires 3D Fourier transform for 2D imaging. Frequency offset caused by chemical shift affects the signal equation. It must be included in signal equation as well. And the chemical shift can be written as an axis in K-space. It can be shown as an axis in K-space. In that way, our signal will become like this, where KFT equals T. So, KFT is our chemical shifts K-space representation. On the other hand, 2D imaging, we should consider that the data collection starts at a non-zero KF position, and to include that portion of K-space, we should use spin echo. And in that way, we can have a K-space trajectory that includes KF equals 0 point as well. And after 90 degree, we should use 180 degree excitation to acquire spin echo at about time TE. And we can change the sequence in that way. For 3D imaging, which means volumetric imaging, then we should have to do a 4D Fourier transform, because we will have all gradients, phase encoding X, Y, and Z, and there will be also chemical shifts frequency offset. In that way, we will have about 4 axes for K-space, and we should perform 4D Fourier transform to image reconstruction. I will show you 2 experiments of MRS. The first one is single voxel spectroscopy. As you can see, there is only one voxel selected through the tissue, and spectroscopy of it is given as below. And the second one is CSI, chemical shift imaging. This is done for a larger tissue. As you can see, a larger volume detection is provided, and we can see the spectroscopic imaging, the graph on the below. So that's all with my presentation. Thank you for watching.